Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the course of communication skills. This is lecture number 25 and the topic of today's lecture is strategies for developing reading skills. This lecture is the part first of this discussion, and in the second lecture we will also discuss some of the strategies which are helpful in developing reading skill. I am your teacher Muhammad Asif Khan, lecturer, Department of English, Kohat University of Science and Technology. Dear students, starting from the discussion agenda for today's lecture, the point from where we will start our discussion is that first of all I will define reading, and this very discussion is the same discussion which we started earlier, and this is the recap of the discussion which we already did in the previous lectures. So the main discussion of this lecture is that we will discuss the bottom-up view of reading, the top-down view of reading, and the third strategy and the most modern approach of reading is the interactive reading. After that, I will provide you a list of different strategies which are very helpful in developing reading skill, and out of this list I will give you definition of some of the important strategies. So let's start from the definition of the reading. As we already discussed, that reading is an ability of an individual to read a text, and then he has that capacity and faculty to comprehend the material which is provided in that text, and in the end he has that capacity to interpret those written words which are available in that reading material. Dear students, we can also define reading ability as a capacity of a person to decode written language or written text, and the second stage in that process is that he comprehends and interprets its meanings. So reading is a cognitive process that involves decoding symbols, and the purpose of this decoding is to arrive at meanings. And now we will read about the bottom-up view of reading, and the definition of bottom-up process which we already studied when we were discussing the bottom-up strategies of listening is that in this process we see that the focus is on the text. So in bottom-up view of reading, reading is considered as a linear process by which readers decode a text word by word, and linking the words into phrases and then clauses, he arrive at the meanings of that available text. So this is the process where reader decodes text word by word, and he is not considering the prior knowledge which is often being considered in the top-down view of reading. So here I want to define the linear process. It is a process or development in which something changes or progresses straight from one stage to another, and it has a starting point and an ending point. So here reading is a process which has a starting point where we see that reader decodes a text word by word and arrive at meanings. This very definition is being provided by Gray and Roger in 1965. Now let's look some other bottom-up views of reading. So what is bottom-up reading? It is basically a textual comprehension, and that involves adding the meaning of words to get the meanings of clauses. So first of all we will add the meanings of the words. When we will read the words, we will add meanings to them, and in the same way we will move upward to define the meanings of the clauses, and this way in the end we will comprehend the whole text. So most activities are based on recognition and recalling of lexical and grammatical forms. We see that bottom-up reading involves looking into individual components of the text in order to understand the text as a whole. These individual elements include letters, words, phrases, clauses. From letters I mean that it includes recognizing letters correctly and applying phonics. From words I mean that guessing the meanings of unfamiliar words based on the context of that very text. So in the bottom-up reading, the most important thing is to study the individual components of the text. So that is the most important feature of the bottom-up reading. In top-up view of reading, we see that emphasis on the meanings. And the second important element of top-down view of reading is to arrive at meaningful learning. In this view, reading is not just extracting meaning from text, as we did in bottom-up strategies, where we were decoding the text word by word. Here we see that it is a process of connecting information in the text with the knowledge the reader brings to the act of reading. So top-down reading means taking prior knowledge into account when encountering a new text, so that students' concepts or active schema related to a particular topic or theme helps them incorporate what they learn from their reading. So here the most important thing in top-down reading is that the student or the reader is taking prior knowledge into account when he is encountering any new text. So another way of defining the top-down view of reading is that in top-down reading we see that reading is a matter of making sense of written language rather than decoding the printed sounds. It is the definition being given by Smith in 1994, and he describes reading as a matter of making sense of the written language. And here he is not focusing on only decoding the sounds of the words. Another way of looking at the top-down view of reading is the schema theory, and it describes that how the background knowledge of the learner interacts with the reading task. And this theory describes that how a student's prior knowledge and the previous experience with the world is important in decoding a text, in deciphering a text. So according to top-down view of reading, we see that how the prior knowledge, background knowledge, or the previous experience of the student that helps the reader to arrive at the meanings of the text. So that is very important in this discussion. Now we will look at the most modern and third important strategy for developing reading skill, and that is interactive reading. So interactive reading is a process of constructing meanings from text through the use of both bottom-up and top-down processes, strategies, and skills. So in interactive reading, we are basically mixing up bottom-up and top-down strategies wherever we need. So in this type of reading focuses on the interaction. It is a balanced approach, and in this method we see that both bottom-up and top-down strategy is being used to teach reading. So bottom-up and top-down processes occur simultaneously in interactive reading, and that is for the readers to comprehend the meanings of the text. Whether they are using the first strategy or the second one, the actual thing is to have the complete comprehension and understanding of the text. So these are the three views of the reading. Now I will give you a journal overview of different strategies for developing reading skills, and the list is very long, but I have just provided you short list, and out of this short list I will only define the few ones, and in the next lecture I will give a detailed view of the first 5 strategies which are being used for developing reading skill. The list of these strategies starts from previewing in reading, then comes the predicting in reading. We will also look at skimming and scanning. Another important technique for developing reading is guessing meaning from context. The next is paraphrasing, summarizing, revising the text. Checking or monitoring for understanding is one of the important strategies. And the next strategy is asking questions, developing a mental image. We can also name this strategy as visualizing the things that are happening there, clustering, inferring, setting a purpose of reading, taking notes when you are reading something, synthesizing chunks of information, reflecting, rereading, and evaluating. These are some of the strategies for developing reading skill. Dear students, I will just define a few of these important strategies, starting from previewing. Previewing is a strategy in which a reader uses prior knowledge and set a purpose for his reading. So it is a strategy in which a reader used to recall prior knowledge and set the purpose for reading. So these two things are the important elements of previewing before reading. So another important strategy is predicting. It is basically the ability of the reader to get meanings from the text by making knowledgeable predictions. When he predicts about the text, it enhances the ability of the reader to read the text. And when he is predicting, actually he is thinking about provided material. So predicting is the second important strategy. Then comes the skimming and scanning. Skimming and scanning is the technique of rapid reading. We see that skimming is that reading that is being done in order to get the general overview of the material, and scanning is done in order to find specific facts out of that material. So both are techniques of rapid reading. Skimming is being done in order to get general overview of the material, whereas scanning is done in order to find specific facts and figures. Now comes the guessing from context. Guessing meanings from context means that you have a good guess about the meanings of a word. For example, if you are reading a text and you do not have previous knowledge about any word, so you have a good guess about the meaning of a word. And that guess is being established from the words that are around that word or from the topic of the paragraph. I will give you detailed information on this topic in the coming lecture. Then comes paraphrasing. It is designed to help students to focus on the most important information in the passage. When the student is doing paraphrasing, actually he is focusing on the most important information in that very passage. This strategy improves students to recall main ideas and specific facts. And when students read short passages of material, they identify the main ideas. The technique being used in this process is that students read short passages of materials and then they identify the main ideas and the details that are listed there in that passage, and after that they rephrase the content in their own words. So that is paraphrasing. Then comes the summarizing in reading. It teaches students how to discern the most important ideas in the text, how to ignore irrelevant information, and how to integrate the central ideas in a meaningful way. When you are writing summary, what you do, you just consider the most important ideas in the text. You have the ability to ignore irrelevant information and in the end integrate the central ideas into the meaningful way. So teaching students to summarize improves their memory. After summarizing, we have another technique, and that is asking questions. It is the reading strategy in which the reader stops and asks himself questions. And these questions are to see whether the text makes sense. And the second purpose of asking these questions is that reader reread the text if he needs more information on that topic. Then we have the strategy of visualizing things. It is the reading strategy in which the reader creates mental images of the settings, of the characters and the events in the text. When he is visualizing things, it helps the reader to keep that idea in the mind. After visualizing, we have inferring. It is that reading strategy in which reader uses clues in the text, and he uses prior knowledge to fill in the gaps and draw conclusions. So here reader uses those hints and clues that are available in the text and mix those clues with his own knowledge, and then he fill in the gaps, and in the end we see that he draws conclusions. So dear students, evaluating in reading is a strategy that is one of the key strategies, and we see that it is the process in which a reader thinks about the text as a whole, and when he is evaluating, then he is forming opinions about that text. So these are some of the strategies which we discussed here. Dear students, very interesting lecture, because reading is the thing which we normally do when we are studying, so we can't ignore the reading process, and it is the process which we are normally doing every day. So as a student, you have to be very much conscious when you are reading a material. Dear students, I will suggest you that whenever you are reading, you should focus on these strategies. So the first strategy is bottom-up view of the reading. You must think about the way you are reading the text. If you are decoding the text word by word and linking those words into phrases and sentences, then you are doing bottom-up reading. And if you are not just extracting the meaning from the text, but you are going for mixing the material being available for you in the text and mixing it with the knowledge you also have in your mind. So in this way you are taking the prior knowledge into account when you are reading the text, and you are relating the already established concepts in your mind with the material that you are reading at that time. So your concepts about that topic or the themes you already have on that topic, that helps you to have a broader understanding of the text. But the most important thing is that reading is that process of constructing meaning from the text, in which you mix these bottom up and top down processes, strategies and skills. So I will suggest you that when you are reading a text, you don't apply only one of these strategies. You should apply multiple strategies. For example, first of all, you preview the material, you go through that material, then you predict about the conclusions, and when you are reading, if you are not having a dictionary and you are feeling some difficulty in finding the meanings of some word, you guess the meanings from the context. These are some of the strategies. If you want to develop your reading skill, then you should do paraphrasing, you should summarize the things, and in paraphrasing and summarizing, revision is very important. So when you do paraphrasing or when you are summarizing things, it becomes very easy to check your understanding of the material. So when you are reading, you should ask questions. It will help you to visualize things, and you would be able to infer different things. So these very strategies, and the strategies like taking notes or synthesizing chunks of information or reflecting on the reading material or rereading and revising the things and evaluating the purpose and aim of that piece of material or the reading you are doing. That is very important. So I believe that if you will be having these strategies in your mind when you are reading, it will be very helpful for you to arrive at the final conclusion about that text, and you will have the better understanding of that material. So I hope that you will be having now better understanding for the strategies of reading skills, and in the coming lecture I will further explain the concept, and I believe that you will be more clear about this topic. So thank you very much for listening passionately. I hope that now you will be having the initial information about the strategies for developing reading skill, and you will have the complete knowledge of the topic when you will listen the second lecture. Thank you very much for listening passionately. Allah Hafiz.